Murder, She Wrote, usually presented at this time, will not be seen this evening.
I want to know why, and I want to know now.
I am terribly sorry, Mrs. Fletcher. There's been a dreadful mix-up.
Actually, it's because we want to bring you the following special presentation.
5, 3.
My water broke!
There is nothing wrong with your television set.
Very pleasant good evening to you all. Don Richards reporting.
For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
We're traveling back to a time when a loaf of bread was 9 cents, a new car $900. You could have a baby for $100 and nobody had even heard of television.
Long may he live.
We interrupt this program for special news. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii by air, President Roosevelt has just announced. The attack also was made on all naval and military activities and the principal...
Radio was the great communicator back when Washington, D.C. looked like this, and when, 3 months after Pearl Harbor, I stepped into the world.
You must remember this, a kiss is still a kiss, a sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by. And when two lovers woo,
Hello, then and now, I'm John Goldsmith. And it took me 50 years to muster up the courage to become a parent. In the very same hospital where I was born, Holly arrived, with a little help from Jan.
A little help from me. You should try it, right, Holly? Anyway, the birth of Holly got us to thinking about the entire experience and really how much it's changed in the few years since John was born.
Okay, touche.
Technology is one big area.
He used to be the man who paced the waiting room. Now, he in some cases knows as much about it as the mother-to-be does.
This would be a bad time to ask if you want more children, right?
Mm-hmm.
We refer to it as an echo boom because it really is the children of the baby boom generation having children.
We're not only talking about changes in having a child, the costs, the drugs, and how hospital stays are measured in hours instead of weeks, but also the changes in having a child.
Baby, this is your daddy.
Hi, I'm the baby, brand new, just out. Gotta love me, come on, gotta love me.
And gotta buy you everything, like 7,665 diapers.
And gotta get some help figuring out how to raise you.
What to do.
When to do it.
Where is Spock when you need him?
Still a household name after all these years.
A very bright 4-year-old when I was getting my boat ready to go cruising for the rest of the summer, and he says, "If you're Spock, where's your spaceship?"
Which brings us to America's favorite babysitter.
I think it's impossible to define a family today without including a television set as a member of the family. And there's some parents now, not many, but who are throwing the TV sets out.
Hopefully not for the next hour.
And finally, we'll just have fun with babies, the craziness they cause.
Hi, baby. Hi, how are you?
The effect they have on the rest of us.
Yeah. Oh, she's so beautiful.
He looks just like you.
You're on television, Kyle.
And Daddy's desperate attempts to capture every step of development.
New children are the #1 reason why people buy these things.
How much have we changed? Nothing says it more simply than seeing how complicated it is to take a picture. You really have come a long way, baby.
You Really Have Come a Long Way, Baby is brought to you by the latest breakthrough in Shell gasoline technology, new Formula Shell. Your Washington area Acura dealers. Experience luxury and performance. Test drive an Acura. People's Drug, today's neighborhood drugstore. And Motorola. A Motorola pager lets you stay in touch with the important people in your life.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Keep pushing. Come on. Hold it. 2, 3. Good. Harder. Keep it going. Keep it going. Keep it steady. And here it is. Congratulations.
When push comes to shove, having a baby hasn't really changed in a million years. Except it's tough to find a good primeval forest these days.
See how fast?
But in my lifetime, in the past 50 years, everything but the pushing and shoving has changed. A lot.
Babies haven't changed at all.
What do you mean babies haven't changed at all?
Babies still need to be diapered and dressed and bathed and fed, and they still cry at the same point, and they still walk at the same point, and they still sit up and roll over and do all of those developmental things just the way they did 50 years ago.
True enough, but the way we diaper them, dress them, bathe them, feed them, comfort them, and nurture them is different. Oh, God! But let's begin in the beginning. Even before the beginning. Talk about change. My mommy never dreamed there was more than one way to do it. And to be sure she was pregnant, she had to wait a couple of months and make a trip to the doctor.
Today's woman waits a couple of weeks and makes a trip to the powder room. And then the thoroughly modern Murphy may consider her choices.
In Mother's Day, getting unpregnant was unthinkable, not to mention illegal. Mom also spent 9 months wondering whether I was going to be a John or a Jane. Now we can see the future, sex and everything else.
This is the baby's arm here. This is the forearm. This is the hand up here, the fist.
The latest generation of ultrasound delivers an astonishingly clear picture of the next generation of the family. It also provides some malpractice protection for doctors and reassurance for mothers, who may buy additional peace of mind by probing the very genetic makeup of tomorrow's child.
A very large percentage of women are getting some form of genetic testing in their pregnancy. It's not like we have any one test that can pick up all birth defects. It would be really great if we did, but we're nowhere close to that.
But certain disorders may be ruled out or prepared for, thanks to labs like this one. And the chromosome-counting doctor can call a patient only weeks into a pregnancy to say, "I wouldn't bother to buy blue if I were you."
Occasionally I'll get a wife that says, I don't want to know, but my husband really, really does, and I'll put him on the phone and only tell him. Other people say, well, no, they'd like to at least leave that element of surprise left in it.
To you and your baby, we dedicate this film.
When it comes to the big event itself, one measure of how far we've traveled is the distance between a 50s educational film and a 90s sitcom.
And then one day in the middle of things, probably when you least expect it, labor begins. Rhythmically, surely, labor begins.
Oh my God, this baby's coming!
It's a relief to know that your baby is finally on his way. You don't need to hurry. There will be plenty of time. Of course, your husband may get a little excited, but don't let that bother you.
Vivian! Vivian! Where
Well, at least Daddy hasn't changed, but the maternity ward he's rushing into has, dramatically.
And soon you will be taken to the delivery room.
Just for instance, for decades, it was believed that childbirth had to take place in an absolutely clean room. Sterile walls, sterile gowns, sterile mother, well, in a manner of speaking.
Everything is absolutely sterile to protect you and the baby.
By contrast, a modern hospital birthing room looks more like a suite at the Hyatt and is only kept that clean.
We also call it an LDR. LDR stands for Labor, Delivery, and Recovery Room, and it's a single room concept.
Very different. We were in a labor room that was the size of a closet, and it was very hot. So this is lovely.
But we were jumping from one room to another for at least 5 hours. And it was...
You went from labor to delivery to recovery, so there, and then finally to your own room. So there were 4 different beds.
Fewer hospitals playing musical beds is one big change in the maternity scene, but there are many more. Picture this. Minutes before giving birth, the mother-to-be is watching the experience-to-be on the newborn channel, a TV network exclusively for the maternity ward.
Hey, take a look. Carol, look, there's the baby.
I think what the newborn channel has done is really brought hospitals into the video age. Television is the most important means of communication in this country. It's the accepted means of communication, and the newborn channel has simply tapped into that power.
But the channel really clicks after the baby arrives, because this isn't your mother's maternity ward.
Your doctor will see you every day.
A generation ago, hospital stays lasted up to a week or more. Now they are commonly a day or less, and there's no time to teach. So the newborn channel has become an overnight success among childbirth centers desperately seeking to fill the education gap. All of this must be pretty mind-boggling to women who first saw the inside of a maternity ward 25 to 50 years ago.
So we're now dealing with a lot of competition in 1993, lots of birthing centers showing their wares, such as we are doing here today. We've designed these rooms to have some homey touches. We think that's
homey touches and privacy. Even as we chatted in one LDR, 12 others nearby were occupied by women in various stages of labor or delivery. The sound of silence contrasting with the way it was.
It was a huge ward, and all they had was a curtain and screaming all over, and no attendants with you. Yes. And finally they come and shave you, and that was real a shock, something that I never expected. And I wondered within myself, why are they doing it?
Another change. Shaving and enemas are no longer standard procedure, and neither is the well-intentioned but cavalier use of powerful drugs, which had characterized childbirth for decades.
And there will be gas available. Some mothers, perhaps you, may want a certain kind of anesthetic. Feel free to ask for it. But by all...
Now, I had sodium pentothal. Now, to me, if I'd had to go through what they do today, I'd have never had 9 children. They'd give me sodium pentothal. I woke up, my nice little baby, and that was the end of that, and it was great.
But most of yesterday's moms, hearing about childbirth as it is today, feel they missed out on something.
They've said to me, we're giving you a spinal, and that was the end of that. I never knew when the baby was born, which I think is too bad.
50 years ago, and even maybe 20 years ago, perhaps even 15 years ago, we were talking basically about a woman who was passive and who followed directions and was very much of a good girl.
Try to keep your mind free of worry and hurry. You can rely on your doctor and his helpers, you know. They've brought a lot of babies into the world.
Modern mothers are anything but passive. They learn more, are told more, and decide more, like what kind of drugs to take and when.
Nurse, excuse me. I want you to listen to me very carefully. I have something very important to say to you.
Why don't you wait a half hour? A lot of our mothers find they really don't need them after all. In the meantime, you can
could take a walk in the hall. That could really help move things along.
Oh, this baby's on its way, and I think it's bringing luggage.
All right, Danny, I'll stay here and I'll help you focus.
Focus? I don't want to focus. I want drugs. Now get out.
Reading between the laughs, there are messages here about not so natural childbirth in the 90s.
Here comes your baby, Danny.
Okay, we found the spot, so hang in there, okay? Now I'm going to inject a small amount of solution. You may feel a little bit of an achy feeling that goes down in the lower back. That's perfectly normal.
This scene is repeated thousands of times a day in America, where getting drugs by epidural has revolutionized the childbirth experience. They are electronically pumped into the patient in precisely measured amounts for just the desired degree of pain relief. And unlike the drugs of yesteryear, epidurals numb part of the body, not the mind.
To illustrate the point, does this look like a woman who gave birth 15 minutes ago?
Oh, you're not going to cry, are you? You're not going to be a daddy's boy, are you?
When it comes to control over her own delivery, modern mom owes a debt of gratitude to the natural childbirth movement, which began as an effort to get drugs out of the picture, but will be remembered for putting Dad into it.
Let's move it. I want to get this kid out on my 50th birthday.
Even America's most famous single mother is in step with the times.
How can I go through delivery without my Lamaze coach?
While a little bit of Lamaze has rubbed off on every prenatal class, this is the real thing.
And now reach and breathe and look up at your fingertips.
When it comes to prepared childbirth, an unassuming apartment in Manhattan is the mountaintop in Tibet, and Elizabeth Bing is the guru.
Excellent, excellent. And once more, breathe in, make a big belly, release it forward.
It was almost 40 years ago when she began preaching the gospel according to Dr. Lamaze, that with preparation, childbirth could be an adventure to be savored, not a nightmare to be slept through.
The climate was right because it happened during the women's lib movement, the flower children, the freedom rides. I mean, everybody was in revolt against the older generation and said, you know, you did a terrible job, we can do things better, we want to have control of our lives. So I always feel that it was certainly at the beginning a consumer movement. It was the women who said, we want to have things different.
And then you will be taken to the maternity ward to prepare for the delivery of your baby. Your husband will stay behind to answer more questions, fill out the necessary forms, and take care of the financial end of things.
After we did all the paperwork, then he left. So I was there all by myself because at that time you could not have visitors. Your husband could not be a part of that procedure. So I was alone for 5 days.
In my case, I had no one around me. So to have a support person in a labor room, to be able to hold a warm hand while you're going through the pain, it's very, very comforting.
Beyond hand-holding, we now recognize there may be lifelong benefits to Dad's involvement with his child right from the beginning.
It's a whole new life that's coming. The whole family changes. They'll never go back to what it was before. And so it's good that the father is part of it.
I think it has a lot to do with the feeling of family cohesiveness as time goes on, because it was a part of a total family experience, and I think it's just tremendous.
And it's sad, in effect, that our own fathers in many cases couldn't do that, that they were frozen out of that part of their child's life, because I think if you're there at that moment and you see that child being born, how can you not be involved with that child for the rest of his or her life?
Oh, she's so perfect.
Oh, I think it does carry on. In fact, the time to start practicing being a father is right from the beginning, would be my feeling. Fathers used to say, when I would advise them in my early years in practice to participate, to give a bottle, at least one of the night bottles, fathers said, well, I think I'll feel more comfortable when they're more like human beings.
It was primarily seen as a function of the mother, but not just a function of the mother. It was believed that females had some natural instinct that was inborn to be a mother, and that fathers had no such instincts for caring and nurturing children. And when men were pulled into it, then people looked at how they were interacting with the children and saw that they could be very good with them, they could be the primary caretakers, and that the children would grow up fine, and that the fathers had the instinct too.
In fact, it's one of the few good signs in our society, because I'm worried about many aspects of American society. But that's a good one, that fathers are taking more active care.
So the dad today is much more nurturing, much more sensitive, I think, knows a lot more about child care, is a much better partner and a much better father, and the child has got to be much better off.
Daddy.
Don't I always take care of everything? Like the captain of a ship, the pilot of a plane. She just heard how much they charge for hospital parking.
If we didn't delude ourselves into thinking somebody else is paying for it, we'd all be suffering from neonatal sticker shock.
The little boy that's closest to us is probably under an hour old.
And has just checked into a $409 a day bassinet.
Take it from us, with the possible exception of a professional athlete's salary, nothing has appreciated like the price tag on a baby. Our hospital bill is 10 pages of IV tubing, fetal monitoring, and bilirubin lights.
At the risk of sounding like Andy Rooney, I got to tell you something. There are 49 items on here I just don't understand.
Like, what in the blue blazes are chucks and chicks? And where do they get off charging the baby a $123 admission fee? Like they had all that paperwork checking her in? To make a long bill a short story, by the time you add in all of the doctor's charges,
And my cesarean, which is the method of delivery in about 25% of all the births in America today.
the cost of having little Holly here came to a whopping
Granted, we had the baby in a high-rent district, and there was the C-section. But bottom line, since the 1950s, the price of a bed at our hospital has gone up 8,000%. And wherever you do it, having a baby is at least 50 times more expensive. Why?
Well, when I started practicing in '65, I paid $235 a year for my malpractice insurance. I charged I think we only charged probably $175 for the prenatal care, 9 months, delivery, and 6 weeks afterwards. I quit practicing because of the malpractice premium, which was running in the neighborhood of $60,000 a year.
Almost $4.5 million a year is how much Washington's most popular birthing center, Columbia Hospital for Women, socks away into a self-insurance fund.
That cuts back on the ability to hire employees, give them additional increases, to purchase other equipment. All this is affecting the the quality of care because these monies had to be put aside.
It takes a little longer to get in the second time because of the scarring that's there from the first.
The quality and cost of care are also affected by the practice of legally defensive medicine, which may not be the best medicine, but is almost always the most expensive. The most glaring example, nearly 1 million deliveries a year by cesarean section. The doctors performing them are not only studying medical case histories, but legal ones.
She's huge. She's huge. If you look at the outcome of most of the cases, the conclusion by the jury is either that a cesarean should have been performed earlier or one should have been performed when one wasn't. And it's difficult to separate that out and to say, from a medical perspective, I know that I can wait longer. I don't have to do a cesarean at this point. When in the back of my mind, I hear the legal profession saying, gee, if you do a cesarean now, you're going to have a perfect baby.
Okay, and with the eyes, you do that?
I'll put the medication in his eyes in just a minute.
And if this guy thinks he isn't perfect, he can sue the doctor who delivered him. In some jurisdictions, up to 20 years from now.
After I've retired, after I'm dead, there are several physicians who've had lawsuits at this hospital who have deceased, and their wives and families and estate are still contending with the lawsuits that happened years and years ago.
I sometimes feel, somewhat jokingly, but also very bitterly, that too many Americans have the idea the solution to life's problems, especially the financial aspect, is to be run over by the truck of a very rich corporation and sue and get $3 million and then relax and watch television the rest of life.
We're also paying the price for our own genius. We've developed amazing and amazingly expensive technology for testing, monitoring, and safeguarding our children from unlikely emergencies.
And when it's your child and your baby, you don't want to run the risk that you're going to be that percentage that has a problem.
So the hospital environment, the technology is really an insurance policy, and
Right.
we're all paying for it in our bill whether we needed it or not.
Right, right. We also have facilities for the newborns, so that many years ago there were infants that we wouldn't even try to save, and now there are many, many younger babies that can be saved, and that's built into the cost.
To underscore the point, when Sue Ann Stockey was born prematurely in 1950, she was lucky to survive because she weighed about 4.5 pounds.
By today's standards, Vicky Liakos was lucky to survive because she weighed about 1.5 pounds, was so small just after birth she could wear her mother's wedding ring as a bracelet.
I'm just extremely glad that the technology was there and the insurance was there and everything was in place to enable us to have this child, and she's, doing so well.
Sue Ann spent 3 weeks in the hospital at a cost of about $300.
Vicky spent 4 months in 2 hospitals at a cost of about $500,000.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Any way you add it up, through higher taxes, higher insurance premiums, or lower salaries while employers provide insurance, we're all footing a bill that has come a long way.
You breathing better now, baby?
Seems better already.
It's as obvious as a steam-filled bathroom at 2 a.m. that we haven't come a long way in curing the croup. What's changed is how we learned about the remedy and confirmed it and triple-checked it just to be sure we were doing the right thing for the baby.
50 years ago, when I was in diapers, if my mother sought to find out, what's that green stuff coming out of his nose? Or perhaps wanted reassurances that, and I quote, there's no connection between thumb-sucking and undesirable sex practices, she could turn to the Better Homes and Gardens baby book, one of only a couple publications of its type on the market in the early 1940s. When it comes to reading all about it, you really have come a long way, baby.
The fact is that there were only 2 or 3 books on raising children at the time that I started writing mine.
Today, there are twice that many books just on, you name it.
I mean, I know of at least 6 or 7 titles just on baby massage. I don't imagine that my mother would have ever even thought about that she would need to look at a book on massaging your baby.
Of course, none of the Spock-come-latelys can dream of matching his success. If the world's most famous pediatrician hadn't gone political in the 60s that cost him some book sales, there's no telling where he'd be today. As it is, he has to settle for second bestseller, behind the Bible.
If I'd known ahead of time that the book was going to sell 750,000 copies a year and going to make a total of 40 million copies, I would have been terrified. What I wrote the book for was not to change a generation. I had no such grandiose ideas as that at all. I wanted to make child rearing more comfortable, easier for parents. And that's why the first sentence in the book says, you know more than you think you do. I was trying in a simple-minded way to reassure parents right from the beginning.
Spock's line has stayed the same, but parents have changed. This is our stack of reassurances. Because family and community support structures aren't what they used to be, and because in this age of instant information, many parents belong to the Fear of the Month Club, we're looking for answers wherever we can find them.
New parents are unbelievably hungry for information. We get most of our subscribers when they are just about to have a baby and in the first few months of the baby's life, because that's when you are most insecure, as I say, most eager to know how to do it. You'll buy everything, you can get your hands on.
It seems sad to me in some ways that parents are so uptight and so worried and concerned, consumed by all of this, that a lot of people will come in and buy 4 or 5 books on the same subject.
Women are leading such, diverse lives that there's a lot of loneliness that I think, the result of that is a kind of loss of consensus about what's the right way to raise your kids. And that's a major source of anxiety for parents.
There are good things about it. I think parents are more aware and things get attended to quicker than they might have in the past. But I think that it's also sad that parents don't trust themselves in their judgment more.
Some of them who don't trust their instincts maybe shouldn't. But what I'm saying, if they feel that insecure, like they don't know what they're doing, no one's right, then maybe they should read something to feel more comfortable. I've seen some parents do some really surprising things. I saw a mother beating her baby every day because she was trying to bile train the baby at age 1 year. So a mother like that, I would not say trust your instincts.
If all of these experts could agree on one thing, it would probably be, what's the biggest single change for children in the past 50 years? You're looking at it.
Before they can walk, they can look at television. Children watch it and stay glued to it, and they're passive. Really, they're passive. They're not learning how to do other things. They're not interacting with the environment, with people, and they're getting a message that somehow people entertain you and you don't have to do anything about it, which I think interferes with schooling, interferes with reading, interferes with effort.
I think it's also a terrible shame that television is not being used in an educational way with children, because there's no doubt about it that it's the most effective learning tool that there is.
The photo studios have to wait till there's a baby to start cashing in on the boom, but everybody else begins selling, it seems, when the kid is still in the womb.
More and more advertisers want to reach women prenatally. They want to reach them before that baby arrives and she's distracted. And as list gathering techniques have improved and database marketing has improved,
Today's moms are up to their expectations in flyers, coupons, and catalog pages. And after the blessed events are recorded, those slick messages are timed to their ages. 'Cause selling products to new parents in their panic is as easy as selling life preservers to passengers on the Titanic.
You want your baby to have the best of everything and to have everything, particularly if Joey next door has anything, you want to have it too. I don't know what the exact figure is, but new parents tend to spend a lot on their new baby.
Tell me about it, said a new daddy-o, making a TV special to pay the piper. Tens of billions a year is what we spend on stroller, playpen, and diaper. My parents didn't buy a safety seat covered with labels that warn. Before 1973, the Consumer Product Safety Commission hadn't even been born.
you need a lot more equipment right now to raise a baby than you did 50 years ago. You basically needed a baby and a mom and dad, and you were ready. All these things that our parents didn't have and would never have conceived of are now available, and they're now must-haves.
This place sells the real must-haves, like a camcorder with 37 buttons, knobs, and switches. Optional at extra cost, a degree in engineering, so you can operate it without any hitches. Uh-oh. A trip to Grandma's house with that darling baby you have sired is when you begin to realize for Desert Storm, less support equipment was required. Treated like children until a real child is had, the dogs are just dogs now, and that's kind of sad. Holly. Having a baby is a time when your dinner guests surely think closest to the nursery is the powder room sink. A funny thing happens to the brain of your wife as soon as that little one enters her life. Take, for instance, my Jan out on assignment to ask another new mother about this refinement.
Did you find, Tammy, that after you had the baby, you've become, let's say, just a little bit more scatterbrained than before, or forgetful? I mean, I find myself, I can't really concentrate on 3 things at one time anymore, and it's, let me ask this question all over again, okay? Because
I understood it perfectly.
Well, then answer.
We guys can't indulge in this silliness and laughter. We've got a job to do. It's pictures that we're after. It's our sworn duty as daddies to capture every move, anyway, anyhow, so we can embarrass those kids of ours about 17 years from now.
I'm the baby, gotta love me, big purple eyes, I'm very curly, yeah. Every home should have one of me. What's me? I said jump on the bed, hit my daddy on the head, run around the house when they tell me not to. I take every chance to make a poop in my pants, but I'm the baby, and you got to.
Hey, no, you're gonna break it.
Oh, isn't that a cute little baby? How are you?
Hey, what's that smell?
Come on, give me a big smile. Give me a big smile.
Say goodbye to everybody's been watching you.
In a statistical sense, she's just another baby. One of almost 200 million born in the USA in my lifetime.
She's going to function and develop much the same as tiny explorers have down through the ages.
But from the super absorbent stuff in her diapers to the microchips in her baby books, she and we definitely have come a long way.
Say goodbye, Holly.
Come on,
Say
Holly.
goodbye.
Wave bye-bye to the people.
Say
They
bye.
have to go.
Say bye.
Wave bye-bye. Holly, that's
There
it.
you go.
There you go. Wave bye-bye.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
She does look just like Melissa. I think she does.
I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
A little baby, when you wipe it off and it sticks its little tongue out, and there's little eyes just looking around and sparkle. There's a little personality that's instantly, you know, babies are beautiful. You're okay. Look at you. It's okay. Oh, Lena.
What's been the biggest surprise since you've had him?
That I have the capacity to love like this. I had no idea that I could love something that much.
What a wonderful world.
What about this little girl right here? You'll take her?
My baby knocked out. I'm gonna take her.
You'll take her?
Rubber right there. He's knocked out.
Oh, there, now you can see. Oh, she's got those big eyes.
Does she?
Yeah, she does.
Good.
Over here on that one. And I think to myself,
She looks a whole lot like Luke.
the colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying,
What's she doing? She looking at you?
Babies cry. I watch them grow much more than I'll never know. And I think to myself,
enjoy your children. Pretty soon they'll be grown up and you can't enjoy them anymore because they won't be yours.
yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful